My father-in-law sold my motorcycle to buy a boat. You barely rode it anyway, he said. My wife claimed I was overreacting until I called the police. That custom bike was worth $80,000. He sold it for $5,000. Grand theft. He was arrested at the marina. My father-in-law Robert stood up at Thanksgiving dinner, wine glass raised like he was about to deliver a toast, and said the words that would change everything. A real man provides for his family without asking his wife to work. He was looking directly at me when he said it. 23 people at the table. My wife Sarah's entire extended family. Her mother Linda, her 3 brothers, her aunts and uncles and cousins, all of them watching as Robert Morrison, 64 years old, retired postal worker, self-appointed patriarch of the Morrison clan, decided this was the moment to publicly question my manhood. Some men, he continued, his voice getting louder, understand what it means to be the head of a household. Some men make sure their wives can stay home, be mothers, live comfortably. And some men, he paused for effect, well, some men need their wives to work 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. Sarah's hand found mine under the table, squeezed tight. A warning, don't engage, just let it go. I'd been letting it go for 3 years. 3 years of comments about my job, my car, my apartment, my inability to provide properly for his daughter. 3 years of Robert treating me like I was some kind of failure because Sarah worked as a nurse while I built my software development business. But something in his tone that day, the smugness, the performance of it, the way he was enjoying humiliating me in front of everyone, made something inside me snap. I smiled, set down my fork carefully, looked him right in the eye. Robert, can I ask you a question? He looked surprised that I was engaging. Pleased even, like he'd finally gotten a rise out of me. Sure, son, ask away. How much is your mortgage payment? The question landed like a stone in still water. Everyone went quiet. Robert's smile faltered. What? Your monthly mortgage payment on this house. How much is it? I don't see how that's relevant. Humor me. You're making this public. I'm just asking a question. How much do you pay every month? He glanced at Linda. She was staring at her plate, face pale. She knew. Of course she knew. $2,200, he said finally, puffing his chest out. $2,200 a month on a 4-bedroom house in a good neighborhood. Not everyone can say that. I nodded slowly. That's right. Not everyone can. Exactly. A man provides for his family. Makes sure they have a roof over their... I've been paying it for 2 years. Silence. Complete, total silence. Robert's face went from smug to confused to white in about 3 seconds. What? Your mortgage payment. $2,200 a month. I've been paying it since November 2021. Sarah asked me not to tell you. I'm Marcus Chen, 34 years old, and I'd been married to Sarah Morrison for 3 years when that Thanksgiving dinner happened. We met at a tech conference in Seattle. She was there with her hospital's IT department. They were upgrading their patient management system, and she'd been asked to provide the nursing perspective. I was there pitching my startup to potential investors. She was brilliant, funny, had this way of cutting through bullshit that I found instantly attractive. We got coffee after my panel discussion, dinner that night, breakfast the next morning. 6 months later, I proposed. She said yes before I finished the question. But from the beginning, her father had issues with me. Robert Morrison had worked for the Postal Service for 37 years. Started as a carrier, worked his way up to supervisor, retired with a decent pension and a strong sense of how men should behave. His worldview was simple. Men work, women stay home. Families have clearly defined roles. The fact that his daughter was a registered nurse making $74,000 a year, that bothered him, but he could justify it. Healthcare is women's work, he'd say. Nursing is nurturing. That's natural. The fact that I worked from home, building software, running a business that didn't require suits or offices or traditional employment, that he couldn't justify. A man should go to a workplace, he told me once. Should have a boss, should understand hierarchy. This freelance tech stuff, it's not real work. Never mind that my freelance tech stuff had generated $340,000 in revenue the previous year. Never mind that I'd built a SaaS platform that was being used by 47 companies across 3 states. Never mind that I owned my own company, employed 6 people, and had just closed a Series A funding round. None of that mattered to Robert because it didn't fit his model of what a man should be. The first hint that Robert was in financial trouble came about 18 months into our marriage. Sarah came home from Sunday dinner at her parents' house looking worried. Dad mentioned something about refinancing, she said. Said interest rates were good, wanted to take advantage of them. Makes sense, I said, not thinking much of it. A lot of people are refinancing right now. Yeah, but the way he said it, he seemed stressed, and Mom was doing that thing where she changes the subject really fast. You think something's wrong? I don't know, maybe, but if I ask, Dad will just get defensive. She was right about that. Robert didn't like questions about his finances, didn't like anyone implying he couldn't handle his responsibilities. The few times Sarah had offered to help with anything, buying groceries, paying for dinner, he'd reacted like she'd insulted him personally. The second hint came 2 months later when Linda called Sarah in tears. They were behind on the mortgage, 3 months behind. The bank was starting foreclosure proceedings. Robert had been covering it up, telling Linda everything was fine, but she'd finally seen the letters. He's too proud to ask for help, Linda sobbed over the phone. He keeps saying he'll fix it, he'll figure it out. out, but Marcus, we're going to lose the house. Robert's pension was smaller than he'd expected. The Postal Service had changed their benefit calculations right before he retired, and what he'd been counting on turned out to be about $800 less per month than projected. His savings, decimated by his mother's medical bills 2 years earlier, weren't enough to bridge the gap. He'd been putting the mortgage on credit cards, then paying the credit card minimums. The debt had spiraled. Now, they were facing foreclosure on a house they'd owned for 28 years. Sarah hung up the phone and looked at me with tears in her eyes. We have to help them. Of course we do. But Dad can't know it's us. He'll refuse. He'll be humiliated. She stopped, took a breath. He already thinks you're not providing for me properly. If he knows we're supporting him, he'll never recover. I thought about it, about Robert's pride, about the comments he'd made about my work, my income, my ability to be a husband. Okay, I said, we'll do it anonymously. That's how I started paying Robert Morrison's mortgage in November 2021. We set it up through a lawyer, Patricia Chen, no relation, estate planning attorney, 24 years of experience. She created a legal structure that allowed me to make the payments without Robert knowing the source. The bank was told that an anonymous benefactor, a former colleague of Robert's who'd struck it rich in investments, wanted to help a fellow postal worker. The payments would continue indefinitely, with the sole condition that Robert never be told who was providing them. The bank didn't care where the money came from as long as it came. They cleared the arrears, updated the account to current status, and sent Robert a letter saying his financial hardship accommodation had been approved. Robert bought it completely. Told everyone at Sunday dinner about his old friend from the service who'd retired early with some tech stocks and wanted to pay it forward. Made himself the hero of the story, the guy whose loyalty and friendship had inspired such generosity. Linda knew. Sarah had told her mother the truth because Linda needed to know the house was safe, but we swore her to secrecy. Robert can never know, Linda said. He'd be devastated. He'd feel like he'd failed. So I paid $2,200 every month, automatically, through the legal structure Patricia had set up. No fanfare, no acknowledgement, no gratitude from the man who thought I wasn't capable of providing for his daughter. For 2 years, I watched Robert puff up his chest and talk about being a provider. Watched him lecture me about financial responsibility. Watched him tell Sarah she'd married down because I didn't fit his model of masculinity. And I said nothing, because Sarah asked me not to, because keeping the secret was more important than defending my pride, until that Thanksgiving dinner. You've been doing what? Robert's voice was barely a whisper. Paying your mortgage, $2,200 a month for 24 months. That's $52,800, plus the $11,000 I paid to clear your arrears when the foreclosure proceedings started. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, turned the screen so he could see the transaction history. 2 years of payments to Morrison Family Trust, the legal entity Patricia had created. Everyone labeled mortgage assistance. That friend from the Postal Service who won big on tech stocks? I continued. That was a story we told you so you wouldn't lose your house and your pride at the same time. But apparently you've gotten comfortable enough with the arrangement to use it as a platform to question whether I'm man enough to provide for your daughter. Robert was staring at the phone screen like it was written in a language he couldn't read. Sarah's brother David, oldest of the Morrison siblings, corporate lawyer, always the first to defend his father, spoke up. This is bullshit. You're making this up to embarrass him. I pulled up the legal documents Patricia had prepared, showed him the trust structure, the payment authorizations, the signed agreements with the bank. Every page documented, notarized, legally binding. Your father was 3 months behind on his mortgage in September 2021. The bank had initiated foreclosure proceedings. His credit was destroyed from putting payments on high-interest cards and missing those payments too. Linda called Sarah in tears. We stepped in, anonymously, at your mother's request, to protect your father's pride. I looked at Linda. She was crying, but she nodded confirmation. David's face went from skeptical to shocked. He turned to his mother. Mom, is this true? Yes, Linda whispered. It's true. We were going to lose the house. Marcus and Sarah saved us. Robert still hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, just stood there, one hand on the table like he needed it for support, his face the color of ash. Sarah's middle brother James spoke up next. Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you tell Dad? Because he asked us not to, I said. Because Linda knew Robert would rather lose the house than accept help from the son-in-law he thinks isn't good enough for his daughter. So we built a system where he could keep his pride and his house at the same time. And you're telling him now because James was angry, but I couldn't tell at whom. Because I'm tired of being insulted in front of my wife's family. Because for 2 years I've listened to lectures about being a provider while actively providing for the man doing the lecturing. Because Sarah deserves better than watching her father humiliate her husband at Thanksgiving dinner. I stood up. Sarah stood with me, her hand still in mine. You want to know if I'm man enough to provide for your daughter, Robert? I'm providing for your daughter, your wife, and you. Have been for 2 years. I just did it quietly because that's what Sarah asked me to do. I looked at Sarah. She was crying now too, but she squeezed my hand tight. We're leaving, I said. When you're ready to apologize, not to me, but to to your daughter for making her watch this. You know where to find us." We walked out. 23 people at that table, and not one of them said a word. The drive home was silent for the first 10 minutes. Then Sarah spoke. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For asking you to keep it secret. For making you sit through 2 years of his bullshit without defending yourself. You were trying to protect your father. I was enabling him. There's a difference." She wiped her eyes. "I knew he was being horrible to you. I knew it was unfair. But I told myself it was easier to just let him think whatever he wanted than to face the truth." "What truth?" "That my father is a bully. That his idea of being a man is so fragile that he can't handle his daughter's husband being successful in ways he doesn't understand. That his pride matters more to him than treating people decently." We pulled into our driveway, sat in the car with the engine off. "I love my dad," Sarah said quietly, "but I love you more. And I should have stood up for you a long time ago. You stood up for him by saving his house. That counts for something. Not when he uses that saved house as a platform to insult you." She turned to face me. "What happens now? That's up to your family. The payments will continue. I'm not going to take someone's house away out of spite. But I'm done pretending I'm not good enough for you." My phone started buzzing. Text messages. A lot of them. "Linda, I'm so sorry. Please forgive him. He didn't know. David, we need to talk. Soon. Family meeting without dad. James, holy shit, dude. Holy shit. Sarah's youngest brother, Kyle. That was the most badass thing I've ever seen. Respect." And then, about an hour later, one from Robert. "We need to talk." I didn't respond to any of them that night. Just sat with Sarah on our couch, her head on my shoulder, both of us processing what had just happened. "Do you regret it?" she asked. Telling him? I thought about it. About Robert's face. About the silence at that table. About 2 years of biting my tongue while being told I wasn't enough. "No," I said. "I don't regret it at all." Robert showed up at our door 3 days later. He looked like he'd aged a decade. Thinner, tired. The arrogance that usually surrounded him like cologne was completely gone. "Can I come in?" Sarah looked at me. I nodded. We sat in our living room. The living room I'd furnished with money from my not real work, in a house I'd bought outright with money from my freelance tech stuff. And Robert Morrison tried to find words that had apparently never existed in his vocabulary before. "I owe you an apology." "You owe Sarah an apology," I corrected. "I'm just the person you insulted. She's the one who had to watch." He flinched but nodded. Turned to Sarah. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry for how I treated Marcus. I'm sorry for embarrassing you. I'm sorry for being too proud to see what was right in front of me." "Why did you do it?" Sarah asked. "Why did you treat him like that when he was the one keeping a roof over your head?" Robert was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. "Because I was ashamed. Because I'd failed. Because I'd spent 37 years telling myself I was doing everything right, being everything a man should be, and then I retired and discovered I couldn't even pay my mortgage." He looked at me. "When Linda told me some anonymous friend from work had paid off our arrears, I knew it was probably bullshit. I knew it had to be family. But I let myself believe the lie because believing the lie was easier than accepting that I'd failed." "You didn't fail," I said. "The pension system failed you. Medical bills failed you. The economy failed you. You did everything you were supposed to do, and the math didn't work out. But I was supposed to take care of my family. You did. You just had help. That's not failure. That's life. I treated you like garbage." "Yeah, you did. And you kept paying anyway. I didn't do it for you. I did it for Sarah and Linda. You're just the beneficiary of other people being more decent than you deserved." He absorbed that like a physical blow. Nodded slowly. "Linda told me everything. Showed me the legal documents. Explained the trust structure." He paused. "You built something so I could keep my dignity while you paid my bills. I don't even know what to call that." "Compassion," Sarah said. "It's called compassion. The thing you didn't show him." "I know." Robert looked at his hands. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't know if I'd forgive me, but I need you to know that I was wrong. About everything. About what makes someone a good provider. About what makes someone a good husband. About what makes someone a man." He stood up. "The payments. Marcus, you don't have to keep—" "I'm not stopping the payments," I interrupted. "Linda doesn't deserve to lose her house because you're an asshole. But we're going to restructure things." I pulled out the documents Patricia had updated that morning. "The trust is being modified. Instead of anonymous payments, this will now be documented as a loan, interest-free, with payments deferred until your pension situation stabilizes or you sell the house. Whichever comes first. It'll be a legal obligation, not charity. I can't pay you back. Not all of it. Not then you'll pay what you can, when you can. But it'll be documented. Official. No more secrets. No more pretending some anonymous benefactor is keeping you afloat." Robert took the documents, read through them. His hands were shaking slightly. "This is more than fair. It's decent. There's a difference. Fair would be making you suffer for how you treated me. Decent is acknowledging that your wife doesn't deserve to suffer because of your pride." He signed the documents, all of them. Patricia had left signature lines marked with sticky notes. Every page was a reminder that his house, his security, his comfort, all of it was maintained by the man he'd tried to humiliate. "Thank you," he said when he finished. "Both of you. I don't deserve this kindness." "No," Sarah said. "You don't, but Mom does." He left after that. Didn't try to hug us or shake hands or pretend we were suddenly okay. Just took his copies of the documents and drove away in the same truck he'd been driving since 2004. The truck I'd been indirectly keeping insured and registered for 2 years. The rest of Sarah's family handled it differently. David, the corporate lawyer, was furious at first, not at me, but at Robert. Dad's been lecturing all of us about financial responsibility for years, making us feel guilty for buying new cars or taking vacations, and the whole time, he couldn't even pay his own mortgage. James, the middle brother, took it with more humor. I mean, it's kind of hilarious when you think about it. Dad questioning whether Marcus can provide, while Marcus is literally providing for Dad. That's sitcom-level irony. Kyle, the youngest, became my biggest supporter, started deliberately bringing up my work at family events, talking about how smart it was to own your own business, how forward-thinking remote work was. The first time he did it at Sunday dinner, Robert went pale and changed the subject. Kyle just grinned at me. Linda hugged me for a full minute the next time I saw her. I'm sorry I asked you to keep it secret. I thought I was protecting him. I was really just enabling him to be cruel to you. You were trying to keep your family together. I understand that. Family isn't worth much if it's built on lies and humiliation. 6 months after that Thanksgiving dinner, Sarah and I hosted our own Sunday dinner at our house. The whole family came. Linda brought her famous sweet potato casserole. David brought wine. James brought his new girlfriend who I'd met twice and already liked better than James. Kyle brought his gaming laptop and spent an hour showing me his new streaming setup. Robert brought nothing, just showed up with Linda, sat in the chair I offered him, and ate the food I'd cooked quietly. But after dinner, when everyone else was in the living room, he found me in the kitchen loading the dishwasher. The house appraisal came back, he said. Yeah, we've got about $90,000 in equity. Linda and I talked. We're thinking about selling, downsizing, something smaller. You don't have to do that. I know, but we want to. That house is too big for 2 people. Too much maintenance. Too much memory. He paused. If we sell, we can pay you back. All of it. $63,800. Every penny you paid. The loan agreement says, I know what it says, but I want to pay you back. All of it. While I still can. I closed the dishwasher, turned to face him. Robert, I didn't do this for repayment. I did it because Sarah asked me to help her family. I know, but I need to pay you back. I need to look at myself in the mirror and know I settled my debts to the man I wronged. We stood there in my kitchen, the kitchen I'd renovated myself with cabinets I'd installed and countertops I'd chosen, and I saw something I'd never seen before in Robert Morrison's face. Humility. Okay, I said, if that's what you need, but there's no rush. Take your time. Find the right place. Make sure Linda's happy. He nodded, started to leave, stopped at the doorway. Marcus, you're a good man. I should have seen that from the beginning. Yeah, you should have. He left. I finished loading the dishwasher. Sarah came in a few minutes later. What did Dad want? To tell me they're thinking about selling the house, paying back the loan. How do you feel about that? I thought about it. About 2 years of secret payments. About $52,000 I'd never expected to see again. About the Thanksgiving dinner that had changed everything. Honestly, I feel relieved. Not about the money. I never cared about that. But about him finally understanding what he put us through. Sarah wrapped her arms around me from behind, rested her head against my back. I'm proud of you. For helping them. For standing up for yourself. For being exactly the man I knew you were. Better late than never, I guess. Better earned than assumed. They sold the house 8 months later. Downsized to a 2-bedroom condo near Linda's sister. Wrote me a check for $63,800. Every penny I'd paid on their mortgage. Down to the last automatic payment. I put the check in our safe deposit box. Didn't cash it immediately. Wanted to make sure they'd settled into their new place first. That they didn't need it for emergencies. Sarah asked me what I was going to do with the money. I don't know yet. Maybe start a college fund. Maybe invest it. Maybe donate half to a charity that helps people avoid foreclosure. You could buy that sailboat you've been looking at. I'd been casually browsing sailboats online for months. Nothing serious. Just a someday kind of dream. Maybe, I said, or maybe I'll just keep it in the bank. Knowing I earned it twice, once by making it, once by being right about who I am.